I was thinking about all of that.
I know. Okay, last but not least. Let us down. Thank you.
I would do too. Hey, how would your, first name basis?
I think they did a fine or fine. I think they did. I think that's
Good morning, we're going to call to order our meeting, and this time we'll also be doing approval of our minutes. I hope you take time to look over those packets. Before I take a motion to approve the minutes, we've been reminded to use our microphones. So we're going to get information to that, make sure we get those microphones to you so that others will be able to hear it. If you look over those minutes, I'm having a motion to approve. A motion, to have a second? Second. Have a second, any comments on the minutes? Are they all look like exactly how you remember it? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, next. We'll go to our public comment section. Anyone wishing to speak today before the board? Seeing none, we'll close public comment portion. Next, we're going to go to our action items. Our first up is CBB 2025-01. I'm going to turn it over to Taylor Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today we have 9 amendments proposed. And again, Mr. Chair. The first thing I want to do is what's in hope. So a tip is short range transportation program that covers 4-year span. Lists all the regionally significant and heavily funded transportation projects and services in the NPO planning area. Mostly consistent with selected on the adopted regional transportation plan. It's heavily fiscally constrained by the federal appropriation for estimated revenues. And the current TIP was adopted in November 2022 and accounts for approximately $2 million of federal, state, and local funds. And the interactive map is available at GNRC.org/TIP. Today we have our proposed TIP amendment. I'll start off with the East Wisdom Street widening. This is the termite revision. This is, changing from, North Mountain Village Road to east of Rutland, to the west of North Mountain Village Road to east of Rutland Drive. This is to account for the lane tapering required to go from 4 lane to a 2 lane in our village. And I should say as well, we're adding about $8.5 million total federal funds to these, amendments in total. The next amendment is Walter Perry, Wolfchackle Island Road Improvements Project. This is adding funds for construction overages. This is adding roughly $5.8 million of federal USDG funds to the construction phase to cover construction overages from the recently incurred with bid award. Next function we have is the electrified natural, a new project adding to the tip. It's recently National received a charging fueling infrastructure award. And so it's adding currently $2.9 million federal funds with a total project cost of just under $6 million for the life of the project. Next, we have our East National backbone. This is another termite revision. So this is then revising project termite to Union Street from 3rd Avenue North to 1st Avenue North, Woodland Street from 1st Avenue North and South 11th Street, South 5th Street from Main Street to Davidson Street, South 10th Street from Main Street to Sevier Street, and also update the length of the project to 3.4 miles, 3.44, excuse me. There is no fund changes projects termite revision. The next 3 projects are just replacing USDG, which works for US SDG dollars, with USDG, which is National Urbanized Area Funds. There's no increased dues and funds, just a swap of the funds on the projects. The first one we have here is Florence Road sidewalks. It's replacing a little over $300,000 of federal Murfreesboro and SDG funds with USDG dollars for fiscal year 23 right away, fiscal year 26 construction. Those funds we moved that are being removed or made available projects in the Murfreesboro urbanized area. Next, we have Jefferson Pike widening Laverne. This is similar. It's replacing a little over $700,000 in federal Murfreesboro area SPG funds for fiscal year 26. FEMA design with the equivalent amount of USDG dollars. Again, these funds will be made available for projects in the Murfreesboro urbanized area. Lastly, for the last swap, we have Lowry Street Improvements Phase 2 in Smart. This project is replacing $200,000 fiscal year 23 construction, which is going to be modified for fiscal year 25 to the current fiscal year with USDG dollars. Again, these will be available to project in the Murfreesboro urbanized area. Last 2 projects we have are in Gallatin. They are removing construction from the FEMAC dollars available for the project in the tip. This is the question has changed. They're essentially from their bookkeeping fiscal straight for the CMAC program. As a note, this is not reducing the award or moving the fund overall on their award. Just when Gallatin has the project closer to construction, they'll approach the air quality office at TDOT and get those funds added back to the tip at that time. Moving forward, all new CMAC projects will follow that same process. It'll be have the earlier phases program, so need to design right away, and then they'll approach some air quality office to get their awarded construction now added to the tip when they're ready. So the first project we have here is Walk Forward Multi-Use Trail Gallery. It's really a little bit over $3.1 million of federal CMAC funds from fiscal year construction 26. And once again, that's a Gallatin most approach the TDOT air quality office at when they are closer to construction, either in this tip cycle or the next, to get those funds added back to the tip page. And lastly, we have Gallatin Citywide Sidewalk Improvements Phase 2. This is removing a little over $2.6 million in federal CMAC dollars from the fiscal year 26 construction for the same reason. Once again, City of Gallatin does have those funds available to them. They'll need to approach the TDOT air quality office at that time. Get those funds added back to the tip when you're close to construction.
All right, thank you, Taylor. Any questions for Taylor? Yes, sir.
Taylor, on the MSTBG fund, you said that they're gonna be made available for projects in Murfreesboro.
That's right.
So it's not really a swap, right?
It's a swap of the funds of the project, so essentially swapping on the project page itself, but you're right, it's
So the USDBG that is coming to those projects was on purpose.
yes, it will help programs at USDG.
Any other questions? Let's get this item moving forward, PBB 2025-01, a resolution amending the Transportation Improvement Program for federal fiscal years 2023 through 2026. I have a motion to approve. Have a second.
Second.
Any public comments on this item before we vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Next, we'll move to our next action item, and we'll ask for Max to talk to us about that.
Mr. Chair, good morning, everybody. So today we'll be continuing the conversation on the update to our federal functional classification system. Once again, this provides a framework for identifying the roles that roadways play across our region, as well as implications on roadway design and federal aid opportunities. Like I said, continuation of the discussion, we've been in communication with you and your staff since about June. And at that time, we requested for local submissions of revisions to be made. We reviewed those. And then over the last month or two, we've been making regional revisions as well. And hopefully today we'll be formalizing the submission that we plan to send over to TDOT for approval and ultimate sending to Federal Highway for their approval. Like I just mentioned, as far as how the revisions were submitted, we had locally submitted and regionally submitted. As you can see on the map here, the locally ones are in the dark blue. That was done by Columbia, Spring Hill, Nolensville, Metropolitan Nashville, Mount Juliet, Hendersonville, and Portland. And the regional ones were done in-house by GNRC. Of the locally submitted revisions, most of them were in areas of rapid growth in the jurisdictions that I just mentioned. Of course, this changes traffic patterns or the functionality of the roadway. Also, increases in capacity on roads in those areas lead to them operating in a different form than they had 10 years ago when we did a similar process. This map is probably very difficult to see the coloration differentiation, but essentially you're looking at what the roadway was classified as and what it went to. For the most part, if it was a local roadway, it went to a minor collector. If there was a minor, or to a collector, if it was a collector, it went to an arterial. It was trying to get it classified as a higher route due to increases in volumes or added capacity. There were a couple of situations, I think in Hendersonville, where we actually declassified, so we took something from a collector or above down to a local roadway, just because it's not being used in that manner anymore. When looking at the regional review, most of what we focused on was a artifact of 10 years ago, the way that roadways were classified. In urban areas, there was just a collector. There was no distinguishing between urban or between major and minor collector. The way that the classification operates now is you do have to make that distinction. So process that we went through was essentially identifying collector roadways in urban areas that were below a volume or below a segment length that would make it more of a major collector route. So generally speaking, that was like a 3 mile and 3,000 ADT threshold. And then of course, we work with local jurisdictions to make sure that that does not impact their road network in a negative way. Other artifacts that came out of the switch between the old way and the new way of doing things, I think in the Murfreesboro area, there were changes at the urban-rural boundary that just needed to be cleaned up, honestly. I think it was going from a collector to an arterial, which is not something that you would typically recommend. Similar maps, so the purple ones that you see up there are the old collectors, and as you can see, most of them went to a minor collector with the recommendation that we made. There were a couple of collector to local revisions that we made, and most of those were roadways that don't connect to another roadway, which is a new requirement that federal highways began to enforce. So I believe there were 2 instances of that, and we did make a revision on Franklin's behalf to add in Matt Catrick extension. All of these can be viewed on an interactive map at gnrc.org/map/federal aid. And please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We still have a little bit more time, to look at these, but hopefully in conversations that we've had with your staff, we'll be submitting a really good set to Congress.
Thank you, Max. Any questions for Max dealing with this? Is a request, to have these changes adopted.
Max, to that last point, am I hearing that if we adopt this today, that there still could be department changes requested before submission of the document?
If there were requests after this, we would have to go through the approval process. Now, this is a process that goes, it's continuous. So if there are changes, if there are new roadways added, if there is a change in functionality, at any time you can make a request. And of course, we would have to go through the approval process, but yes, it can be modified at any point in time.
I guess to that end, I'll follow up later.
These are just major revisions that are done as a result of the census designation of urban and rural. If you remember the discussion we had on federal aid urban boundary a couple months ago, this closely ties into that process. And so it's just major revisions are done every year.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, so we're gonna need to get a motion to get resolution PPB 2025-02, a resolution requesting revisions to the Nashville Area Federal Functional Identification System. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Do I have a second? Since these are public hearings, there are any public comments for this resolution? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Next up, we'll go to our informational items, the requested amendment to regional transportation plan. I'll turn this over to Michael Gifford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you again this month. I don't know if that flies. Hopefully come back next month as well. I have for you a request from the Tennessee Department of Transportation of this body to consider amending the regional transportation plan that was adopted back in February of 2021 to incorporate their proposed choice lanes projects in the I-24 corridor. So I'm going to get this item on the table and then turn it over to Rebecca Hammonds with TDOT, who is heading up the project management side of this for the department, to share with you a little bit more information about the project. And then I'll come back and review the process with you as we look ahead to potential amendment to the regional transportation plan. But what you should know, and many of you do already know this, that TDOT is developing the choice lanes project along the corridor that increase roadway capacity and modify interchanges on a regionally significant route, also designated as the U.S. interstate. And because of that, the proposed improvements were required to be included in the regional transportation plan and this MPO transportation improvement program before the project development process can get underway in earnest. TDOT has requested an amendment to the RTP to incorporate the full scope of the that they envision it now, to allow them to come back to you and request an amendment to the short range transportation improvement program. The program funds within the next couple of years on phases related to design engineering, environmental review, right-of-way acquisition. So that is what to know. Project information is on the screen here. This is information provided to us by the Tennessee Department of Transportation. It's essentially a description of what they're hoping to accomplish through the provision of choice lanes along the corridor between Nashville and Murfreesboro. I think you anticipate this being about a $3.7 billion project. At this time, we anticipate that price tag being paid for through user fees collected from users of the choice lanes through, we call it tolls that you pay to access those choice lanes. And those would pay off revenue bonds that are issued front the capital for construction. Should there be an overage that isn't able to be covered through user fees. The department anticipates being able to provide the difference through funding that was made available through the Transportation Modernization Act, so through the state funds. There's no anticipation that this project will receive federal funds that are made available statewide or to our region. But that's always a possibility. But nonetheless, it does need to be included in the RTP and the TIF in order to move forward. And I'll turn it over to Rebecca for a bit more information about the project, and then I'll be back with you to describe the process.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Taylor. And Michael, to your credit, you know, it is a toll lane. We don't like to use the T word, right? But we understand it is a toll lane. We've actually had to tell people, we're not trying to trick you. We just want to make sure you understand this is your choice and you can choose to use the lane or not. But I want Brian to come introduce yourself.
Sure. Good morning, Brian Ledford, Assistant Chief Engineer, TDOT, responsible for our alternative delivery and our public-private partnerships programs. So glad to be here. Rebecca and I will tag team this little presentation, and glad to answer some questions. Through the enabling legislation, the Transportation Modernization Act, TDOT is now able to enter into public-private partnerships. This is new to Tennessee. It's not new to peer states. We've learned a lot from states that have gone before us, but the idea is to engage with the private sector to design, build, finance, operate, and maintain new lanes. It's important to understand that this is all incremental to the capacity that's there today. That's the basis of the name choice lanes, that these are all new lanes that folks can choose to use or not. But some of the benefits, obviously, dollars that would have been spent dealing with some areas of urban congestion can be used elsewhere in the state. You all know the limitations of the funding paradigm that we find ourselves in. We have an annual program of about $1.2 billion that has to cover both new projects and programs. And obviously a $3.7 billion piece of infrastructure is hard to bite off given a $1.2 billion annual program. So this is really enabling us to look at what we consider a mega project to deal with urban congestion in the Nashville area. So the corridors that bubbled to the top when we looked at our congestion studies, looked at traffic, looked at growth projections, were across the state, with the exception of Region 4, which the decision was made to advance another type of mega project. And we were glad to receive a federal grant. So with TDOT, Arkansas, and this federal grant participating, that's why you don't see Region 4 up here. But the other projects, I-24, I-65 in the Nashville area, I-24 in what we call Moccasin Bend, and I-75/40 just outside of Knoxville. But the I-24 corridor, both in terms of the intensity of congestion and the duration of congestion, was by far the most congested corridor in the state of Tennessee.
But what's really important here is to make sure that we continue to emphasize that this is something that we want to be a program, not a one-off project. This is something we want to implement on a programmatic approach throughout our state, not just here in Nashville.
That's right. So the timeline that we're on, the Transportation Modernization Board approved the I-24 corridor. That body was formed pursuant to the legislation. They approved the corridor, which is one of the actions that falls to them, in February of 24. In August, we had several public information meetings. We saw several of you there, and have had a number of other public interactions that Rebecca will talk about here in just a minute. And right now we're at our request for qualifications point in the timeline where we're asking developer teams to submit their qualifications to us to get shortlisted to be considered for this eventual procurement. I can tell you that the interest in that developer community, in the private sector, the interest is very high. We have 6 teams that have formed that want to be in Tennessee. They want to be in Nashville because they believe in the the policies, they believe in the growth, and they believe in the ability that Tennessee and the Nashville area is a good place to do business. So the other elements on that timeline, potentially in the future, request for proposals next year and reaching commercial close by the fall of 26. Commercial close, but between request for proposals and commercial close is a very long and iterative procurement process that involves a number of alternative technical concepts that will be considered and a lot of opportunity to shape what the final project ends up looking like. So if we start construction in 2027 it's interesting to tell folks that this is an aggressive schedule because the public doesn't see things as aggressive when it's years out. But this is a very aggressive schedule for the largest piece of infrastructure that Tennessee has ever constructed. So the purpose and need straight from our environmental document is all about travel time reliability and connectivity. And travel time reliability, both for passenger vehicles, but also for transit vehicles. The ability of buses to use the choice lanes at no additional cost and see routes and envision routes with reliable trip times is a huge piece of what we're trying to accomplish here. So when we say the I-24 corridor, this is the total facility that is being advanced through the environmental process. Roughly 26 miles, you see the northern end, and I'm sure you're all picturing that northern end in your mind. That's a challenging spot, but connecting these new managed lanes in such a way that we keep traffic moving is paramount here. So you see that northern the northern termini near Fessler's Lane out to just short of Briley, and then all the way down to 840 in the south. So we're in the middle of an environmental assessment and expect our finding of no significant impact in mid next year. And the procurement that we envision is a single procurement for the entire corridor that you see on the screen, but it will be in a 2-phase process, and we'll show that here.
Mm-hmm.
The best value procurement that will be the basis of award will be the bold blue lines that goes down to just past Sam Ridley. So that's the initial hard bid best value selection, and then the southern extension will be built. I can't tell you the year that it will be built because the triggers for that will be really about congestion and traffic volume on that southern end, because we want that negotiated extension to happen in a time frame where it pays for itself. If we were to force that early, that would have a much greater public contribution than if we allow that to come when it pays for itself. So I'll let Rebecca talk about engagement.
So when we talk about regular coordination or regular meetings, we've been doing this on several platforms, several approaches. We started industry outreach back in the summer. We've had monthly environmental agency meetings, quarterly stakeholder meetings. We've been here with the GNRC multiple times, and of course, public outreach. But I think what we want to stress is that our engagement and our outreach, we are working to go above and beyond. So there is the standard that we have to do to check a box, right? But we understand that this is brand new to Tennessee. This is brand new to our region. It's brand new to us, quite frankly. We're learning and we are growing as we do this. So what we know we have to do is educate early and often. And we are making sure to reach as many people, or trying to reach as many people as possible. But these are just some looks at some of the regular stakeholder engagements we've currently and previously been doing. Now, we did, as you saw in that timeline, have public informational meetings. That was our NEPA public information meetings. So those meetings, there were 4 of them, 1 virtual, which of course we had the most attendance at, because I don't know about you, but I don't always have the time to drive to a, centralized location to engage in a public information meeting. So the virtual aspect has become very popular and really well attended. We then, of course, had 3 additional public meetings in neutralized or centralized locations. And you can see down at the bottom, really the concerns and the questions that came up. Obviously, people want to know, how long is construction going to last? How will it impact me? What about noise walls? Will we have noise walls? Will my home and neighborhood be shielded from the noise? How is this funded? I mean, with a public-private partnership, we are kind of all understanding this now. This is, like he said, it's new, but we've been talking about this for a while. But to your general public, they don't quite grasp the concept of, oh, well, the state actually isn't going to be paying for this. We keep hearing, well, I don't want to put taxpayer dollars toward a road that I will then have to pay a user fee for. And so we then again explain, well, it's not quite how that works. We are partnering with the private sector to make sure that doesn't happen. And here's how that will go down. So a lot of questions, but what we found in these public meetings is that once people were able to talk to our team or talk to someone to get them the basic understanding of what was happening, really the defenses would come down and people would really start to understand, oh, okay, well, this is starting to make sense. This might not be a terrible idea after all. This is just a look at the heat map of where we're getting a lot of our public comments. So we had a public comment period that lasted from those meetings in August for a month. And you can see, obviously, we are so focused on that corridor. Public comment periods are open to anyone and everyone, but really we need to hear from the communities that are impacted. And that is exactly what we're doing. We're taking time, especially during those public comment periods, but even now we've kicked off a couple months ago, I think, our environmental justice outreach effort to make sure that the communities along that corridor that might often be disenfranchised or don't always receive the outreach that they might deserve. We are trying to get boots on the ground and get pop-ups, community events, tabling. I mean, we're really putting an effort forth in those communities to make sure, okay, yes, we reached out to your mayor. We reached out and had this public information meeting, but we actually came to your neighborhood and we actually were down the street from your home. Just to make sure that we are getting comments and information from them specifically. So next steps, we are, of course, this month looking at RFQ, our environmental assessment and traffic and data, and of course, moving forward into that FONSI as we move into 2025. In December, we of course will have continued coordination with the environmental agencies and FHWA. We're planning a workshop for the TCC and members of the GNRC to better understand the inner workings of a P3 and what our TDOT's approach to this are. And then moving into the next year, we'll of course have more follow-up meetings and workshops, possibly a look at the design and what that might look like in more detail, looking at the EA. And then we will have another opportunity for public input with our public hearings. So those public hearings will show the recommended preferred alternative as we move forward. And we will have the opportunity to engage stakeholders, but also the general public in that way. This is just our usual connect with us live. We want to hear from anyone and everyone. But at that point, I think I will
Yeah, let me,
turn it over to Brian.
yeah, I guess as we wrap this up, there are two things that I think have built, Rebecca talked about when we engage with the public, and a couple of things that I think, 2 points that help build understanding. One is that we're not in a choice here between a publicly funded 4-lane widening of I-24 and a P3. We're not making that choice. The widening of I-24 is not funded under our present funding paradigm. The P3 allows us to do something that's not others. It's a 1 or a 0, given the constraints that we have right now. That's the biggie. And then the second one is stay in the lane you're in today. Don't pay a dime and see your trip time improve. Because in pretty much every other state that does express lanes, 15 to 20% of the folks choose to get in the choice lanes, which means you're going to see your trip time improve in the general purpose lanes. You don't have to pay to benefit. And so those 2 points, we're doing something so that in a way that it can be possible. And secondly, folks truly do have a choice to not pay a dime and still benefit from this initiative. So those are kind of our lead behinds with the folks that we talk to. Glad to answer questions or however y'all want to.
I see a hand. Mayor?
Yeah, I'll ask, and first let me say, I appreciate TDOT's engagement with City of Nashville, multiple members of our various teams. Haven't just completed our transit improvement program, I guess, for my sake, I want to be able to understand too where TDOT was in terms of considering alternatives, especially given that last point. I know there are constraints. I mean, we evaluated rail, discounted it for our program because of cost per mile. I think it helps us have a local conversation. We understand kind of that alternatives analysis you also.
And glad to continue to engage with you all on that. I think, as I said, the congestion studies painted a very clear picture of a need. But yeah, glad to advance that with you. And in terms of the way that the change that we've seen just in the short period that we've been looking at this, when we started this, we knew that the hub there at the mall was going to happen, and so we headed in that direction anyway. But now that the initiative is passed, understanding now what's the art of the possible, we're looking forward to those conversations.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Said that the first phase would go to Sam Ridley Parkway, and from Sam Ridley to 840 would be phase 2, which is not programmed at this point.
It will be part of the procurement, but it will basically be development rights for the winning developer. The winning developer will build the first phase, but they will gain, call it first right of proposal on that extension. And that will be a progressive negotiation. If we can't come to terms with them, we can off ramp and procure that separately. If that's, but all indications are that they will be very motivated to talk to us about that extension. Some of the teams have even asked, can we do that earlier than the triggers would dictate? And our answer is that's absolutely negotiable. So if you're familiar with that section, the extension is pretty much where we switch to the grass median and much less expensive to build. So that extension may be a more straightforward thing than we're thinking. And glad if that's how it works out, we're glad for that to happen.
So how will that affect our plan?
That's a challenge. It's a challenge. It's a challenge, and it's something where we have to engage with you all and understand. There's a very high probability that extension is going to be built And we can talk about the time frame and the probabilities for that time frame, and then we can talk with you all about how that impacts needs along that stretch.
And if I can, I just want to add some clarity around the plan that we just presented, the project. Again, as a reminder, P3's work in the sense that the department, we take a 15% plan, essentially. We take a 15% design and we say, here, this is what we expect it to look like. We are looking for this footprint, this is our NEPA, these are our studies, et cetera. And then the industry comes back to us with, as you mentioned, ATCs or their version of that plan. So what's been difficult to communicate and to make sure everyone understands is that we are presenting a project, but it could come back to look very different. And so as we have these conversations, we are trying to be very fluid and make sure that everyone we work with understands that this is very fluid, because we won't know exactly what that footprint will look like really until we select the end of the procurement.
Ago. And so now what I'm hearing is it possibly could be another 10 years before something is looked at in regards to Animal Road.
Sure. And I think it's important that we not conflate two separate issues. One is the fiscally constrained 10-year plan that had a whole bunch of good projects that they're not in that plan because they're not funded. With maybe some of the uncertainty that we've created with this Choice Lanes initiative for an interchange like Almaville. But what's important is that the improvement to the corridor and the improvement in reliable trip times and the improvement to the ride time in the general purpose lanes still benefits all those folks to the south, whether that extension gets built in year 1 or year 5.
But I also have to go to church and the grocery store with those people and explain to them why they can't get from their house to point B. And so I guess saying that, and I think others along the corridor probably have more questions. And between now and when do we, January, start?
Yes.
Michael, would you be willing to put a meeting together with stakeholders that are along our corridor for some of the questions that we have that we might be able to get more clarification?
Yes, ma'am, I'd be happy to do that. I think that's a good idea too. I know that the department is meeting with communities individually to show them specific concepts that might play out in their community. We've had these regional conversations as well. I'm thankful for the department for spending so much time with us, and Rebecca in particular for her approach to outreach. But I think having a kind of closer conversation with the communities who is directly impacted by the specific project before January would be good.
I think that gives us the ability, one, to have discussion with you all, to have discussion among ourselves, but also to have hopefully some answers we can go back. So when, I'm sure none of y'all get phone calls from constituents asking.
Never happens, right? Never.
Right, so.
I think I just want to add that we understand, we hear you, and what I don't want to be lost on the group is it's not like you haven't missed the boat. Like with the EA not complete, we're still in this process of even reaching the recommended preferred alternative. So to even say that we have a project, it really isn't truly there yet. So, we've had our initial conversations with many of you on good faith, knowing that, we're working toward this together. And then now that we have something a little bit more substantial, and with the completion of the EA, we'll have something even more substantial, and then we'll be able to have those finer conversations of, okay, we are actually hoping to have this interchange at this location. So, having something
much more specific up to this point almost would have been premature. So of course, like, we look forward to that conversation and hopefully it can happen soon.
And Mayor, I think that conversation could also tie in the work that you all are doing with us and TDOT to look at the development that's happening in the corridor, which is going to feed the traffic models within the revenue forecast, but more importantly, just the collaboration between the communities to make sure that the transportation infrastructure is serving your vision for land development and that corridor holistically between Nashville and Murfreesboro. So we'd be happy to do that.
Any other questions?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Michael.
Well, thank you. For my part to wrap up this item, just a reminder that there's no action requested of you today. We do want you to anticipate a vote of this body occurring on January 15th, which is the very next transportation policy board meeting on the schedule. Between now and that date, we are happy to accommodate the request for the quarter level meeting. And so we'll get started to get that scheduled. But the other thing, Rebecca mentioned this in her remarks, but we are also having a work session with TDOT on December 4th at our offices on the back end of our transportation coordinating committee meeting that day. It's an opportunity for you all to join us as well to learn more about TDOT's overall approach to implementing the P3 authority that was authorized through the Transportation Modernization Act. I'm sure we'll talk about the I-24 corridor, but there'll be a broader conversation about how this might look moving forward. And then the other thing that we'll need to do is for that January 15th meeting, which would be a public hearing, as you consider the Regional Transportation Plan Amendment, along with a companion amendment to the Transportation Improvement Program for those activities that they'd like to get started with sooner than later. We'll be releasing the project description and the detail that I shared on the screen with you all earlier to the public, be publicly noticed for a minimum of a 30-day period of time. And we present to you all the feedback that we get from the public as part of your public hearing. I've been talking with a few folks about the project description that we showed on the screen, and I've given Matt a heads up here. We may want to review the RTP language just to make sure it's sufficiently broad to allow for any number of outcomes while still achieving the same objective. Obviously, that'll be moved into programming funds of the tip as we narrow in on a design. We want to be very specific, but I think right now we probably consider broadening that description out just a little bit. So we'll want to have that conversation before it's released for public review and comment. But with that, Mr. Chair, that will conclude that.
I just want to add that, we're looking for the minimum consistent with the plan. Anything that can help move this through tip amendment is really what we're looking for. It can be as generalized as it needs to be, but as long as it doesn't delay the schedule that you see up in front.
Thank you, Matt. I will do the continue with the regional outlook for 2050.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will do this and a little time check here. It's about 11 o'clock. So Max and I wanted to take a moment to share with you all sort of hot off the press look at our 2050 forecasts. Talk a little bit about why this is important to DNPO as it relates to identifying transportation needs across the region. But as we sort through this with you today and then in the coming months, as we get more and more detailed with our forecast for future growth, we want you to also be considering the other ways that you could be incorporating this data and analytics and figure out local planning and economic and community development processes. So I'm going to start here. We use Woods and Pool economics as a source of our population employment forecasts. We get information from from the private industry that is a forecast or a projection of population and employment in a pretty detailed way. So the socioeconomic information that we derive from the census, like the City Census and the American Community Survey, they try to emulate that level of detail in their forecasting. They forecast on an annual basis. So we have forecast out to the year 2050, which is our planning horizon for this RTP update. We could look at any individual year along the way. So it's 2026 to 2050 that we're looking at. But what we really like about the Woods and Pool source of information is not only that level of detail in terms of the nature of the people of the jobs that is forecast that exist within our region, it's also tied to a national control tool. We work a lot with UT as well. They also have population forecasts. But those don't nest within sort of the national movements of migration and population growth. And so these are going to be difficult for you to see today, but as we always do, we share the slides pretty immediately after this board meeting, and this will also be made available online in an interactive way. But this is a look at the population by county across the country in 2020. About 332 million people nationally as of 2020. 7 million of those, or 2% of the nation's population residing in Tennessee. Looking ahead to 2050, we see that nation's population forecasted to grow close to 400 million, with about 8.5 million people living in Tennessee. Still about 2% of the total population across the nation living in our state. We are expected to get about 2.5% of the net growth happening nationally occurring within Tennessee. So about 72 million people between now and 2050 being added to the nation's population total. About 1.5 million people are expected to land in Tennessee. It is important to note, like sort of the hot spots, y'all all know this professionally or anecdotally, that, Texas, the Southwest, Florida, the Southeast, including Tennessee, North Carolina, and Georgia, are really the hot spots nationally for net population growth. And we're experiencing a lot of challenges related to that growth and development, particularly the pace. But it's always important to remember, as we're thinking about the problems of prosperity, that much of America, again, if you see this clearly, you can see that there are a lot of counties that are showing here, losing population as people move out of the heartland into, or the Rust Belt, into rapidly growing metropolitan regions across the nation. And so we experience that in a level within our region as well. When we look at where population is being gained within Tennessee, but we also look to see where population is being lost. There are parts of the county that are losing population. These are communities that will struggle with tax base and community cohesion. But certainly we've got rural counties that are struggling to retain their population. And as a result, their infrastructure and their community cohesion. So it's just, when we talk about population growth, we then lead into issues related to that growth and development, which are symptoms of prosperity. But it's always important to remember our rural partners who are struggling with retaining their population. This is a look at the growth rates by county across the nation. Nationally, about a 19% growth rate between 2020 and 2050. Tennessee will grow above average compared to the national growth rate. Zooming into Tennessee quickly, and I'm eventually going to turn this over to next to show you how we add value to these forecasts for your benefit. This is Tennessee. These are this county by population in 2020. That darkest color are those counties over 500,000 in population. But that's 2020. This is 2050. What's interesting here is that we go from representing 32% of the state's population in 2020, and I'm referring to the 14 counties that we coordinate planning for in one shape or another. Go from 32% of the state's population to 37% of the state's population by 2050, and that's because Middle Tennessee is expected to receive about 65% of the total net growth across Tennessee into that time frame. You can see here that the net population increase by county, and we've said this for multiple years now, but striking about these forecasts, and we are on trend for these every time we update them. Williamson County and Rutherford County are both expected to leapfrog Hamilton County, which is where Chattanooga is, in terms of the most populated counties in the state of Tennessee. Sometime in the next 10, 15 years, I don't remember what year that is, but certainly before 2050. So imagine essentially got National Davidson County and then the equivalent of two Hamilton counties to the southeast. So tremendous growth happening across our region. This is a look at the 2050 population by our area. This is sort of a slide that helps me segue over to Max a bit. The number you should take away from today is that 3.15 million is our population forecast for our region. By the year 2050, to put that into context, that's larger than the present day San Diego, NSA, Denver, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, St. Louis. All these places are just under what that 3.1 forecast would happen at 2050. So you're trying to wrap your head around what that population looks like. There are peer regions that are already there, that are already pressed to the side, have done a lot to invest in infrastructure to prepare for growth that we can learn from. So what we do as it relates to trying to take the population employment forecasts at a national, state, and county level is that we're interested in drilling that down to the parcel level. Where are the people and jobs going to occur at a very local level? Because that's how then we can translate the impact of that growth on the impacts to environmental quality or infrastructure, and namely transportation infrastructure within the context of the MPO process. I'm going to turn it over to Max to share with you some brand new data that we're going to be asking you to help us vet and optimize before we finalize it. We can start with our land use modeling, which is our development forecast.
Thanks, Michael. So as Michael described, we've got around 1 million people that need to be added to our region between now and 2050. And we rely on a land use model. This is our second version of it to distribute that from a county control total down to the parcel level. Not a very simple thing, and I will show you a little bit of the output, but first I wanted to kind of explain what goes into it. So very quickly, the model uses 2010 to 2020 behavior changes. So that's looking at accessibility of households and residents to jobs. That looks at housing prices and income levels of homes, as well as a lot of local input. So that gets you to a 2020 model here with the effort of the research staff. Ashley Glasscock, Joanna McCall, and Sam Williams have spent hours upon hours sorting through over 1 million parcels and over 800,000 structures to recreate current day conditions at the parcel level. That information, coupled with local policy, so that's hundreds of future land use plans and zoning designations, have been identified of what the limit for density or use type at a particular area would be. And then those forecasts are generated out, keeping with respect some limitations to environmental issues, so steep slopes or floodplains or wetlands that might prohibit the ability to develop. So that would be a representation of today. A little bit of growth out to 2030, 2040, and ultimately 2050. Now, this is just the first take at this model. We will be making refinements as time goes on, maybe adding in conditions that are locally defining what's defining growth in your area. Definitely need input from local staff to help us make sure that this is the most accurate representation. These model results are not just for us to look at as a pretty picture. These are used as inputs into solid waste planning work that we do, water quality, air quality, really housing strategies that can be studied across the region. These outputs are used by a whole host of agencies across the region to make educated decisions in terms of infrastructure investment. One of those is transportation. So I'll touch quickly on our child demand model. So we take the population, households, and jobs that come out of the land use model and our direct inputs into our child demand model, which assigns where a person lives, where they work, what time of day they typically leave, and the amount of congestion that would create on a roadway given the number of lanes that it has, the speed that it allows you to drive at. We've made a couple of improvements from our previous model. We've got a new, we call it the supercomputer. It's a pretty bad machine that has been able to reduce our runtime from 7.5 hours down, or sorry, 8.5 hours down to 7 hours. So we're getting a pretty good reduction with being able to see the results in terms of any modifications that we make to the network or the land use scenarios that we're running with it.
Well, maybe introduce y'all to some people at Oak Ridge or something.
It's kind of sick, but yeah, but it's definitely a lot of enhancement there. Some other enhancements that we've been looking at are understanding behavior change since 2020. So we know that there's a lot more work at home. There's a lot more shift in the time that people are leaving to go to work. The ability to telecommute, not having those peak days, all 5 days of the week, but maybe just, three out of the 5. So a lot of those are going into the results that you'll see out of this. Also, this is the first cut. We're wanting to make revisions to, these outputs as time goes along. But you can see, today versus 2050, you get the average reduction in speed across the region is definitely going down. And congested links, the mileage of links that are congested are definitely going up. This is not taking into account any projects that are planned or programmed. So this is just the existing network loading in that forecasted growth. So as we go through the RTP process, we'll be looking at adding in the committed projects or those that are in the transportation improvement program. And it will hopefully help with local submission of any projects that will ultimately be evaluated using these tools for prioritization. With that, I turn it back over to Mike.
Any questions for Mike or Matt on this?
Got a few more things here, but now it's time for your part. So these are the first results from the work that we've been doing in-house and with our consultants. But we need your participation to get this stuff finalized. We're going to be publishing these maps online, interactive dashboards, so you can zoom in and out, find anomalies just don't make sense to you. So we're interested in you pointing that out. But more importantly, what we need you to do is make sure that we're not asking the model to guess things that you already know, namely the development that's occurred since the base year, which is 2023. There's stuff already on the ground the model's trying to predict. We'd like to manually go ahead and place that development. And any development that your planning departments, local governments have approved, permitted, we can work with you to define what approved means. But anything that you think is going to be constructed by the year 2030, we want to go ahead and get that reflected. And honestly, the model's only predicting things that would happen after that. We're also interested in if you have targeted redevelopment areas or planned growth areas that where you want to ensure that you are incentivizing growth to occur, but may not happen on its own based on your current land use policy and zoning, which is what's driving the model right now, that we're going ahead and providing a factor or input there that will draw growth to those areas beyond your current policy that's in place. If you've got something in the works. So again, we'll put this out online. We're already working with your representatives to the Transportation Coordinating Committee, which is often your planning director, some cases codes folks, public works folks on these inputs. But we've got a short amount of time to get this optimized before we need to start using it. But I did mention at the beginning, because I think it's flipped over the slide, is that we are in a major update to the regional transportation plan. It is due to the feds by March of 2026. That's the document, as we just discussed with respect to the choice lanes. So that's your gateway to federal funds. So we've got a lot of work to do to update this plan. It starts with forecasting future year conditions, tools we use to project population, employment, socioeconomic characteristics, land development patterns, and traffic impacts are the same tools that we're going to use to evaluate the competitiveness of your project for formula funds. And then we can then use that data to position your project for discretionary funds as well. And they're made available at Washington, D.C. That does now conclude our report, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions, reach out to them for that.
I do have a question. Mr. Jackson. Regarding the land use model that you're showing, this is, we worked on this when I was at the MPO. We had some constraints that seem to kind of keep us limited to within the county. Has that changed? Is the growth that you're projecting being allocated within the county, or is it allowed to expand to other areas in that region that you put in there?
So it's limited by two things. One is the policy and the other is the constraints, environmental constraints. So those are steep slopes, floodplain and wetlands. Right now, we can't add to those if we see fit. The other way is policy. So a lot of local governments have taken those areas of like where the bridge is in Northwest Nashville, and some of their county. They're very low density anyway. So they're kind of being attacked through two different ways.
Well, Matt, I think that one of the traits you remember us having is our old model that saw any sort of development pre-existing, just didn't tell you. So we've broken through all of that now.
Yeah, I don't want to get in the weeds here. That's obviously not the forum for this, but just, it was one of my thoughts about when you showed that, it looks great, but I wondered if it was stories that weren't being able to be told with that picture. The other thing I wanted to bring up too, and this is something that I kind of mentioned at the TCC, was regarding development and known plan development is, please try to get with TDOT early on in the development stage so we can have this conversation. I think we've been really trying to get in front of projects and not be the ones that are the last to know regarding problems that are occurring because of development that we're not aware of. So I just want to make sure that you and your staff are working with us when you start to hear things about large developments that could be affecting transport, congestion on some of the state routes, and even some of your local roads. So thank you for that.
Thank you, man. Executive report, should go to federal highway and all.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, just a few items. I'll try to be brief. I wanted to introduce a couple of staff in the room here with me. Frank DeBose first, if you'll stand up and wave, Frank, is an environmental protection specialist. He's working with NDOT on the I-24 project, the EA that Rebecca mentioned. So he's been working hand in hand with them as they've been doing all their environmental analyses and public outreach. And then Jeremy Jackson is a newer member of our team. He's been with us for about a month, Jeremy. And Jeremy has been charged with supporting us in both discretionary grant administration as well as local programs project administration and helping to streamline those efforts. So as we were crafting up Jeremy's responsibilities, we were thinking a lot about the work that this body has put into identifying improvements towards how we deliver our local programs project, working with TDOT on identifying streamlining and efficiency, clarifying process and guidance. And so Jeremy's gonna have all the answers for y'all. But he will just act as a resource in helping everyone. And as TDOT's embarking on with their reorganization on revitalizing their local programs process, Jeremy's gonna be working right there in partnership with them. A few items from the federal perspective. Of course, FHWA staff are working with the transition team as we prepare for a new presidency. Nothing official happening at the local level, but there are, questions and things that come about status of major projects, grant awards. So we may be reaching out to y'all if needed. As of October 1, we are in a new federal fiscal year, so we have released $1.2 billion of federal funding towards the state of Tennessee. But we are still operating under a continuing resolution through December 20th. So you all learned a lot about obligation authority and obligation limitation over the past few months. And so that continuing resolution does limit that obligation authority to about a third of that 1.2 billion or so. So we are limited on how much of that funding that we can use. But as that situation does get resolved, we'll be sure to communicate with y'all. A couple of grant opportunities that are available. We'll share this with staff for distribution. Our Protect grant is a resiliency focused grant that funds planning and capital improvement projects. We have 876 million available for resiliency focused projects. That closes in February. And then our RAISE grant is for projects of regional and local significance. It's a pretty flexible funding program. We have 1.5 billion available, and we are accepting applications on that one through the end of January. So we encourage y'all to take a look at those discretionary grants and look for any opportunities to submit applications for those. And then I don't want to steal the GNRC staff's thunder, but I did want to congratulate y'all on your SS4A award that I'm sure y'all will speak about in a bit. So.
Next we'll go to TDOT, man.
Yep, I'm going to yield my time to our Region 3 Director and also our TDOT Chief of Staff, so I will vacate this position. Jay will give an update on projects, and I'll have Steve give an update on the 10-year plan.
It's been good knowing you, man. Good morning, everybody. Jay Norris with TDOT Region 3. Just want to quickly update y'all on projects that are happening in the area. So we have completed and opened Robertson County I-65. It's open to traffic. We cut a ribbon on it. Clarksville Pike in North Nashville wrapped up that project, and then Williams County State Route 96. Those are large projects wrapped up. Ongoing projects. one that's probably most notable is I-40 at Donaldson Pike. You probably noticed we've set 32 beams over the interstate out there. We're doing nightly closures now to put bridge decking down and start tying steel and pouring the deck. That project is moving well. We've worked with BNA to do an acceleration of that project. And a new completion date for most of the work is around July, and the contractor will get a bonus if they get a May completion date. So things are progressing well out there. We're happy with the progress. As far as things coming, we have a section of I-65 near Gillisville, near the Davidson-Sumner County line. It's about a $170 million project. We hope to have that in the February letting. We just got news last week. The permits are ready. That was our biggest constraint, so we're excited about that. We've also got the north section of the Portland bypass, State Route 109. We're currently buying right away, and that is in the August letting of next year. We also have accelerated procuring right away in Murfreesboro on State Route 268 Thompson Lane. It is in FY26, but we're going to have it ready for FY25, and hopefully we can see some movement on that. So those are three. That's almost $500 million worth of work right there for next year. Region 3's got about $1.5 billion worth of active construction right now going. So there's a lot going on in all of our communities. I want to remind you all that we're currently calibrating and training staff for snow and ice operations. You're going to see our folks out this winter. Y'all know that drill. If you have any questions or need help with that, please let us know. I also want to mention that we on the maintenance side, we cut a cycle back on our state routes. So we went from 4 cycles to 3. And if y'all are having issues with sight distance or anything like that, let me know. Let our staff know. We'll make sure to get a slow bar out there and knock some things back for you, so folks can see. So I want to echo what Matt said about access very quickly. Is that we're having situations. We have 2 situations. One is a developer will start work without getting approval from us. I may have talked to y'all. So if I want to echo what Matt said, if y'all could steer us to have a conversation with them early so that we don't get a situation where y'all approved work and we're not, it doesn't meet our standard. So that could be a napkin drawing. We just need to do a litmus test on it, make sure it meets our standards. That's really the key part. I know that we're all facing growth, and we're also having large developments that are building on city and county roads that are impacting state routes. So while they're not on the state route, I want to encourage all that you can use us to be bad cops to make sure that we can have a hard conversation, making sure our system is kept whole. We're running into more and more of that just because growth is happening. So any questions, please reach out. Thank you so much.
Hey Jay, real quick, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
Several people have had some concerns. You just share with the group the amount of money that state's gonna have to go to East Tennessee. Any conversations you've heard so far from where the state's gonna be first of the year about appropriating money and how they're gonna handle that? What are you hearing?
Yeah, so I'll let Steve go into that. Thank you.
Any questions about projects before we get to that? And Jay can answer anything specific about Region 3 projects. All right, thank you again for having me. I've met all of you at some point in time. My name is Steve Challenge. I'm the Chief of Staff at TDOT. I want to start by thanking you for allowing our P3 team to present as well. I'm biased because I came here to start and do this project and wrote the law that allows this thing to happen. I obviously feel very strongly about it. We have the best team possible. Mr. Ledford, Ms. Hammonds, and Mr. Norris, leading our region, are 3 extraordinary people, very gifted engineers, communicators, and they're also just fabulous people you want to be around. So I know they will do everything they can to make sure y'all are comfortable with this. Related to Hurricane Helene, if you've not been to East Tennessee, I spent most of the last 2 months there. It's the worst thing you can possibly imagine. Hurricane went through a mountain. My family is Greene County. I fished the Nohosuke River several beautiful days of my life, many beautiful days of my life. You have to wade across it or walk through it, and the water is that deep and full of raft over it. The water rose 70 feet in a matter of minutes. Peak flow of the water coming over the dam was double the amount of the average flow of Niagara Falls in a given day. It destroyed things that will take generations to rebuild. We, on our side, have $510 million of damages to state infrastructure, roads and bridges. we are very grateful for Sean and our federal partners acknowledging that. There's actually a hearing going on. Time is it, I'm using your phone, there's a hearing going on right now, sorry. In DC, where Secretary Buttigieg is testifying on the damage from Hurricane Helene, Hurricane Milton, several other instances across the United States. Our federal partners are lockstep with us. We're very grateful for that, and acknowledging that, we have $110 million of damages. So that's what we're asking Congress for. They've already provided us, 32 million of that, which we're very grateful for on the front end to help us get started. But we are needing the other 478 million. Is that dealt with? That's what we're asking Congress for right now. Sean alluded to the December 20th continuing resolution. We are advocating with our federal members that 470 million be provided to the state of Tennessee through FHWA during that legislative time. It's critical for us to do that because we are a cash-only state. What we did to fund our Helene damages was we took money from years 4, 5, 6, 7 in our TDOT plan and moved it up to year 1 to pay for Helene damage. What that means is if we don't get that money back, projects in year 4, 5, 6, 7 will change. So that's where we're trying to make sure that we get that money back. We historically, it's always been provided to states for major damages. You look at hurricanes, for the first time Tennessee's ever experienced hurricanes. So we have no prior experience with that individual particular type of anomaly. But if you look at Florida, Texas, all of the coastal states that deal with this, they usually get all their money back. The reason I'm here to talk about this is that is going to, as we communicated to y'all last week over email and notice, that is going to delay the release of our annual 10-year plan. As you saw last year, we did release our plan in December. We said we would update that plan annually. Right now, we don't have the information we need on hand to update that plan. We don't feel it prudent to release something that may change in a few months. So we're going to wait till the spring until we get more information from the feds. We believe we have 2 shots at getting an appropriation, either this cycle during this time that Sean alluded to, or, I'm a recovering federal budget staffer, so I can tell you they're probably going to do it for 3, 4 months. We'll have another shot at this. We're hoping for right now, though. So with that said, our 10-year plan is going to be released in the spring, as we usually do with our 3-year plan to our General Assembly. It will just allow us to actually be real and put something forward that we know we're going to have information on what's going to happen with the plane damage. With that, I will pause and answer any questions you might have.
Questions? I might have one, Steve, if, many of the folks in the room saw the budget presentation, to the governor, anything, to highlight from that ask?
Yeah, we could use your help. For the first time in state history, we are asking for recurring general fund dollars for transportation projects. So the way I put it to our team across the state is you walk into a gas station, you buy the pump, it goes to TDOT, you go buy a pack of little Debbie's, it goes to the state general fund and everyone else competes for it. For the first time, we're asking for little Debbie money. On a recurring basis, right? You can take a pack of gallon, little Debbie, whatever you want to use. We are going to compete with everyone else in the state for those dollars. What we're saying is our gas tax has been flat the last 4 years. Adjusted for inflation, it is negative. So if we want to continue building and fixing the plans that Mayor Reed expressed earlier, which I hear you loud and clear, we need more money in transportation. And the way we feel we're going to do that, one is our P3 project. Again, we believe it's going to help considerably in our major urban corridors, but throughout the state, more general fund money into TDOT is what is needed. And that's what we're advocating for. And thank you for asking the question.
You're welcome. Maybe the second question, the follow-up, thank you for this one, but I also saw the governor's remarks sort of alluding to the need to kind of reevaluate the cash-only status in Tennessee. Didn't get a clear sense from him if that was going to be a priority for this administration or if he was trying to tee up the next administration. But where are you all on the idea of limited borrowing to accelerate project delivery? And is there anything that we could be doing as members of the UPO and staff that study the issue?
Yeah, what I'll say is what you all submitted to us on the statewide partnership plan is incredibly important because it allows us to show the unmet need. If we can show what the need is, we can start truly having conversations about, okay, what is out there? And then what are the options to solve that problem? We believe at TDOT side, we are telling more of a strong story about where revenue is, how it is not there, how it is going down. And at the same time, showing the need for folks not only around this table, but across the state is to, I have thousands of projects that are unfunded and Mary Reed hit it on the head earlier, where she said, I go to church with these people, I go to grocery store with these people, and they can't get to where they gotta be in a reasonable amount of time. We have a revenue story to tell. What we need y'all's help in, and you did on the statewide partnership, is tell us what the unmet need is and put a dollar number next to it, and then we can start checking things off the list. I think he did make some comments into that, which, you know, we're very grateful for. He's a very thoughtful governor. He understands infrastructure. He's an engineer. One of the smartest guys I've ever met. And, we're incredibly grateful for him highlighting what we do at TDOT, because it only emphasizes what our communities need across the state. Thank you.
Questions? Any other information you guys want to share? That's
All right, I'm vacating Matt. Because it's a voting member, and I don't want to do that.
We're gonna go to the coordination committee here. Scott?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. TCC had its most recent meeting on November 6th. I promised I wouldn't play it, but yeah, I wasn't able to attend that one. I'm in East Tennessee at a conference, so I might have to refer to our esteemed vice chair, Mr. Marston. But I did want to say, and it's interesting that Jay and Matt mentioned it. I actually sent an email last week to Mr. Norris thanking them for the work that they're doing with the engagement with the locals on the development side of things. As these projects are coming through, I've noticed, and TDOT's always done a good job with it, but in the last couple of years, I think TDOT has really emphasized that local partnership in terms of, you know, getting with that developer on the front end. If that developer reaches out to them, they reach out to us and tell us about it. They make sure we're there. They want us to make sure the developer's there. We work that into our process. You don't really go to the planning commission if you're doing a project on a state road if we haven't met with TDOT first. And so then the feedback you get at the end of those meetings is real feedback. It's here's TDOT's stance on this. It's not theoretical, you know, bureaucratic kind of stuff. It's good feedback. The planning commission gets answers about what TDOT wants to see on that road. And they're very, very beneficial. So we really appreciate you guys doing that. So thank y'all. I encourage everybody to take advantage of it if you don't. So.
Chair report, staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try to be as brief as possible. I want to start off by saying, thank you, Stephen, for being here with us today. Really appreciate, engaging with Tom over the last couple of years on that Transportation Modernization Act and all that he has done, working with Commissioner DOD. Good transportation across Tennessee. For staff report, as Sean mentioned, we're lucky enough to be awarded Safe Streets for All money. There are other awardees across Middle Tennessee, and we're happy to share that list. We applied for a planning and demonstration grant. We were asking for money to stand up a quick build program that could deliver safety improvements across Middle Tennessee. This is money that will be coming directly to GNRC from Federal Highway Administration. We hope to work with TDOT on streamlining and project delivery. These would be safety improvement projects that we would deliver as a project implementer within your communities that don't require right-of-way acquisition or complicated environmental assessment, but could be low-hanging fruit to really push in some of the serious injuries and fatalities that are happening across Middle Tennessee. This is being pitched as a pilot, one of the recommendations from the project delivery committee task force, which was regional bundling and project delivery, just to try to speed up sometimes it's kind of slow to award a local community a grant, have to go through the local programs process to get that improvement on the ground. So really excited about this. Our full application is available online at that link that's been shared with you previously, but we want to thank Sean, Federal Highway and US DOT for the honor receiving that award on behalf of Middle Tennessee. I do have a few more things to share with you, but before I do, I want to turn it over to Taylor Lee, who will present to you one of the things we have to do every year is publish a list of projects that received obligations of federal funds to meet that requirement where sort of public accessibility to where the federal investments are going. And Taylor's got some highlights of the list that is available from our website right now.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. Is this working? So as Michael said, every year we're required to do a listing of our obligations from the previous year. So that's available on our website at gnrc.org, /transportation. These next few slides are kind of a snapshot of the year as a whole. It also kind of ties in to the stats report you usually get every year. So this one is last date, December 30th, so it's basically like fiscal year 24. So figures 3, 4, and 5, you kind of want to look, it's kind of a snapshot, then some more detail of exactly what we did. So I just see here for 2010 to 2024, we had roughly about $370 million of obligations for federal highway, 370 million in total with FTA obligations. See, that was, as we have here, 2024 is now our highest obligation year. We want to thank our partners locally, with TDOT and federally. We came together near the end of the year, fiscal year, and we get a lot of stuff prioritized and obligated. So that was a really good year for us there. Moving on to transit obligations, see the trend line. Obviously, we had during COVID, those obligations to 2020 were very high. We had roughly, trending up this year, we had roughly about $63 million of FTA obligations in fiscal year 24. Then lastly, for the kind of trend line graphs we're have here, we have sub-allocated dollars. We had roughly a little over $51 million of sub-allocated funds obligated in fiscal year 24. So you see here, that was now the highest. So previously it was 2018, it was about 35 million, so now we're at 51 for sub-allocated. Though for our locally managed projects, we look at figure 5 in your stats report, if you look at the very bottom, it has about $54 million for locally managed projects that have been obligated. They include CMAQ dollars, or maybe state SVG those include. So locally managed projects were closer 54.5 to $55 million total obligated. And as I said, this is kind of a snapshot as well. So we're 50% through. If you look at September, so obviously this will be updated in December, we'll have more obligations on kind of highway in the state. But as of September 30th, we're 50% of the TIP period has elapsed, and we are 51% of obligations. So basically just a little bit ahead of track. So as we were looking previously in those previous months, it was kind of lagging behind by a couple percent. So now we've caught up. So you keep up the momentum that we gained in the year. So I think that we're in a good spot moving forward. One thing I'll say, we also prepare an annual report every year that is currently been drafted and review. We should be posted to the website in the next few weeks. That will have those figures as well, so you can compare that with the list of obligations. They kind of see that information that I prepared today.
Thank you, Taylor. You can keep it quicker. You can go to the next slide. You can share. Can I just add one other thing, Michael, if you don't mind, regarding the obligations and everything like that? This is something that I brought up at the TCC, but I wanted to express our thanks to all of you when it came to the discussion regarding the unobligated balances and how Preston came in and showed you the fish in the pond and explained to you a little bit about the fund swap. Because of that, we were able to have the highest August redistribution that TDOT's ever had, over $300 million. Normally it's somewhere in the $50 to $60 million, but that extra allocation was able to help us advance more projects at a quicker pace than we had intended. So thank you again for that.
And I'll say, I forgot to mention, sorry, Michael. On figures 3, talk about FHA obligations for statewide. We had a lot of US DVDs or sub-allocated that we swapped, that we voted on in our last meeting. I put those obligations, even technically they were under their USDG under the state to give a more accurate picture. I don't want to put them under our sub-allocation, thinking that we had additional $75 million of local funded projects. So if you look for that swap amount, it'll be under the state SDG amount. So in the end, it'll be swapped back, but just be clear on how it looks actually. I didn't want to over-represent any kind of locally operated projects, but you said, thank you.
All right, thank you. Taylor's the guy I go to if you have any help getting your projects through the local programs process. If you've up against the bottleneck, please reach out to Taylor, help keep your project moving. Lastly, a couple of additional updates from staff. The first one here, he's in the room, Daniel McDonald. I want to introduce Daniel. He begins with GNRC on December 2nd as our Director of Transportation and Infrastructure. And then more recently, we convened a planning oversight committee chaired by Chair McAllis, but it also included Mayor Reed and Josh Student and Matt Missouri, Jim Kerr, leading on a few folks. But we convened partners from this board, interviewed Daniel for the potential taking on the designation of the NPO coordinator. We got their concurrence on that designation as well. So he'll be beginning with us in early December. We'll oversee our NPO programming at GNRC and help facilitate our update to the regional transportation plan. In addition to helping to stand up that quick build program that would be funded through the SS4A grant. Couple other things that are really important. I'll skip down to this EDA, long-term disaster recovery program. You all know it, that we administer the NPO program, which is the federal recognition of transportation planning authority for our region, but we're also the economic development district, which is the Department of Commerce designation, and have help our communities access public works funding for job creation, retention through other federal agencies. And in our role, we applied for a grant through the U.S. Economic Development Administration to stand up a long-term disaster recovery coordinator program. And so we kicked this off with our regional council members over the last couple, well, actually, we will be kicking this off with them at the December meeting. I'll talk about in a minute. But that's an opportunity for you to get some additional technical assistance to make sure that you are developing in ways that are minimizing risk of exposure to disasters, and that you're able to rebuild in a more resilient way moving forward. So that you're planning, grant writing, grant administration assistance that we can provide to you through the grant program that's underwritten by EDA. Another competitive grant that we applied for with the Tennessee Department of Environment Conservation is through their Brownfield Redevelopment Area Grant Program, or the BRAG program, which is the governor's initiative to help identify and redevelop brownfields across the state of Tennessee. We were awarded $220,000 by TDEC to help local communities identify brownfields in their backyard, position them for additional grant funding for investigation of contaminants and ultimately remediation and cleaning up to get them back on the market to redevelop. These sites typically have really good infrastructure and are a better option if you get them cleaned up than developing in greenfield areas. So really thankful for that work from TDEC. Also just want to remind everybody that we are also the Area Agency on Aging and Disability for Middle Tennessee, another federal designation from the Department of Health and Human Services Initiation for Community Living. As part of our role there, we provide non-biased, uncommissioned Medicare counseling free to Middle Tennesseans, who the federal government would like for you to go if you have any questions about getting onboarded into Medicare or need a plan comparison as we go into open enrollment. It is open enrollment. I just want you to remember that as you're talking with your constituency or your family members that might be confronted with some decisions to be making as it relates to insurance. It's not uncommon for us to save Middle Tennessean thousands of dollars in drug prescription costs, for example, just by helping them wade through their options through the open enrollment process. So that is ongoing now. Reach out to us for any information about that. And then big shout out to Rebecca Nopi, our volunteer coordinator, our volunteer manager. She started a letter writing campaign during the pandemic, getting volunteers to write letters to older adults across Middle Tennessee who maybe become isolated as a result of the pandemic. We've continued that letter writing campaign, and as of the last couple of weeks, we've reached our 100,000 letter sent out to Middle Tennessee. So very proud of that. I'll end Taylor on the next slide with the one at upcoming meetings. So December 4th, this is the TCC meeting for the workshop with TDOT on P3. December 9th is our annual partnership event. So save that date. I think the email RSVP link went out yesterday. We're inviting you all to join us at Johnny Cash's Bar and Grill right next to the museum downtown on 3rd for a celebration of the work that's being done by cities and counties across Middle Tennessee. That's a 4 to 6 reception with our awards and remarks by our officers. December 11th is the next meeting of the regional council body, which includes many of you wearing a different hat. We'll talk about the disaster recovery program. We'll also present an annual update to our comprehensive economic development strategy, which is sort of like the regional transportation plan in terms of being a gateway to funding, but for the Department of Commerce, it's the gateway to funding through that agency. And then January 15th is the next meeting of this board. And on that agenda will be your consideration of amending the RTP to incorporate the I-24 Tool States project, as well as a companion amendments to program funds for the pre-construction activity. So with that, I'll conclude my report.
Thank you. It looks like we've got one other item of business, time to adjourn.
I want to make one introduction. I introduced our new town manager at our GNRC, but I have not before, so Betty Fantucci is in the back. And so any problems that occur around the town of Smyrna, Dave, who you see, but any positive, great things, can't you see? But we're excited to have Dave on board. He's been with us about a month. He's not left yet, so all good.
We hope you all have a good Thanksgiving, Christmas. See you at the next meeting. So I have a motion to adjourn. Motion. I want the lead. All right.
It's on the table.
Thank you.